Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm Andy RC and today I'm going to be taking a look at the SKYSTARS star-lorde 5-inch freestyle copter. Now, at the making of this video, this guy is so cheap from GearBest. This is the plug and fly version. Be careful because there's a kit version which you'll have to build yourself. And it is available at other stores, but at the making of this video, it is the cheapest from GearBest. And I don't usually do this at the start of a video, but this thing is absolutely superb and I thoroughly recommend it. Now, when I first saw this guy, I thought it looks absolutely massive for a 5-inch freestyle copter, but it's actually not. It's because it's using a mini camera, so the top plate is thinner than usual. So if you look at the Alien there, it is thicker. So it's using the Cadex S1 CCD camera. It is the 2.3mm lens. I know 2.1 and 1.8 are the standard these days, but for freestyle 2.3 is absolutely fine for me. So the motors, they are SKYSTARS branded and they are a 2306 2600 kV. It comes with dowel props and they are a 5040. So for 2600 kV, these are going to absolutely scream, and you could probably go up in size. In fact, when I do my flights, I'm going to fly with these, but then I'm also going to fly with some 5046 as well, because these can take it. However, it should draw less amps on these. The motors are naked bottom, but they also have the little lip to stop the heat shrink from catching the bell of the motor. So, it weighs 370 grams as it is, like this, which you will think is heavy, and some people say, why would you bother with a heavy copter like that? And this is where I need to explain the difference now between freestyle copters and race copters. Because when this hobby first started, people were using copters like this and the Alien to do racing. But then what happened is frames got lighter, they got smaller, and these became race copters. And they are very nimble, they are extremely fast, but they are not great at getting camera footage because the props are in shot, and because they are so light, they're quite difficult to tune to get really smooth footage. So we have the freestyle copter, which can have a GoPro up the front. It gets the blades out of the shot, and the battery can also be mounted on the top, which gives it nice flight characteristics. And also when you land, you don't land on your battery. It also means you can skid along the ground if you like to. In fact, check this guy out. We have got some 3D printed TPU parts if you want to do that, and it's going to protect it if you want to slide along the ground. So I'm really impressed with this package. The arms, you can see, are individual. Something that did worry me is that we've got a single screw in the middle here and then just 4 screws here, which also go through to the stack. But we do have some nuts that they screw into there. My worry with this always is that vibrations can go along the arms from the motors and up through to the stack, and we don't get good flight characteristics. However, the flight controller is soft mounted, and spoiler alert, this thing flies superb. The VTX is a switching VTX up to 800 milliwatt, and it uses smart audio. It's secured down nicely with some sticky pads. It's got a microphone, and the quality of the audio is really good because it's got a heat shrink around it, so you don't get the wind noise. It's using a MMCX connector, and we've also got a TBS Unify style SMA connector up the top, which is SMA. It comes with a pagoda antenna, which actually does have the credit. Now, I know some of you like to have your antenna coming out of the back rather than at the top, because if you hit something then it can knock off your antenna. But with this having a pigtail and MMCX, I prefer to have it vertical like this, and that is because when the battery is on the top there, when it's coming out of the back and facing towards you like that, it can quite often block the signal. So that is just my preference and I prefer it. Of course you'd need to bend it back a little because it's going to be going forward slightly. The XT60 is very long, but it's actually a pretty good thing. You're given these two grippy straps. They're my favorite straps as well, and you can sort of wrap it around the battery and it gets it away from the props, which is really nice. You are given this grippy pad here, which I've already installed, and you might be thinking, well, how would you put a GoPro on the front of there? And I did it in a couple of ways. First of all, I tried this mount here for the floss because it's slightly narrower. However, the floss uses a cable tie at the back and it does move, so that wasn't the perfect solution. What did work best in the end is using the Martian Brain 3D GoPro mount, and because it's made of TPU you can squeeze it like that at the front and at the back, and it is the same dimensions, so that's what I ended up using. So you can use that for your GoPro. So with the GoPro and the mount, it weighs 550 grams, and then with the 4S battery and the straps, it comes to around about 646 grams, which you're probably thinking is too heavy, but heavy is a good thing for a freestyle copter because we want nice, smooth movements, smooth video. In fact, these days you can actually get the footage as smooth as a DJI model when moving forward. It's almost like a gimbal. So as this is a plug and fly, you need to add your own receiver. So I've got my XM Plus mounted at the front here, and then I've mounted the antennas on the arms. I've mounted it in a way so I can still access the bind button, and it's just on some sticky tape here. And at this point I would usually mention the ESCs and the flight controller, but considering you have to install your own receiver, I'm going to take the top off and take a look what is inside this thing. A quick tip though, these screws are 2mm hex screws, and when I first got this thing I tightened them up because I thought they were loose, but they weren't loose. It's these standoffs, the threads on them are quite weak, so don't make the mistake I made. I tried to tighten it fully and it ruined the thread of this one. Luckily the screws underneath for the TPU are slightly longer, so what I did was I unscrewed one of those and replaced it, and luckily this screw was still long enough to go through to the TPU and this as well, but that is definitely a downside. So this is the flight controller and its target is DAL RC F405, and if you Google that board it looks nothing like this one, so I can only imagine that they have copied it. I also think that it is listed incorrectly on the website as well, because it's listed as a micro F4 FC all-in-one OSD, and as you can see it is a 30x30 stack size. So this is the flight controller that they are using. They are calling it the SKYSTARS F405 F4, so they must have just copied the board or copied the target, but you can see it's the same one that is on this copter, and it looks like it also comes with the soft mounts as well, which is good. Now this guy didn't come with any instructions, but luckily there are enough labels on here for me to be able to attach my receiver. What I thought was interesting about this flight controller is there are a lot of these JST connectors, but only one of them is actually connected to something, and it's the ESC board. And if I lift up the flight controller and turn it over, each one of these JST connectors has got breakout pads, which is very rare for a copied flight controller, so I can solder my XM Plus directly to it, and it's labeled up nicely as well. So we have got the S-Bus/PPM pad here, so that's going to be the inverted pad. Then we've got RX1, so that's going to be uninverted. We have got 5 volt and then 3.3 volt for DSM2 and DSMX, and then we have got the ground. In fact, they have used all of the breakout pads to solder everything up. So this is the VTX with smart audio. So this is the spare part for the VTX, and I know that because on the underside of my VTX it is marked E708TM3. Now at first I thought I had got the wrong one because the pictures are really inconsistent on GearBest's website. For example, if we look at this one, there are no mounting holes and there's no microphone. However, if we come over here, ta-da, mounting holes and also microphone. So I think this is just a picture of an older version. So I think this is the spare part. As you can see, 800 milliwatt. This is the LED and buzzer board at the back there, and then this is the camera, and it also has camera controls hooked up, which I thought was a nice touch. Now while I took this off, I was looking at the ESC board here, and I did some googling because it's got this label on here, UFO FPV, and I couldn't find anything. However, if you go onto GearBest's website, there is a ESC board like this, but it's got Halifar on there, so I imagine it's the same one and it's just rebranded. Now I'm not sure if this heatsink is there to dissipate heat or to hide the fact that it doesn't have much filtering, but we will find that out. Now these are 32-bit ESCs and 40 amp. So this is the Halifar ESC board, which looks exactly the same except it says Halifar on there. And if I scroll down here, it actually does have the pin out. It looks like when you buy this one you get a capacitor with it, but spoiler alert, that was not needed in this case. So we've got ground, and then VBAT, VBAT. We've got our signals here in quite a funny order, and then current. Now it says that it does telemetry here, but as you can see, no telemetry out. Maybe they are classing current as telemetry, but no proper 32-bit ESC telemetry by the looks of it. So we have got these pads on here as well. They are through pads. We have got 3 spare UARTs. So we have got RX2 and RX4, then TX2 and TX4. Then we've got SDA and RX3, then we've got SCL and TX3, and then we have got ground and 5 volt. And the camera also has a jumper, and that is set to 5 volt, and the VTX has a jumper, and that is set to VBAT. Now with this not having any external capacitor, we'll have to see how much video noise we get through to the camera. So as they have connected camera controls up, you can go in there and play with the camera settings, and you're going to need to do that because they have left the on-screen display that the camera has on there. So to get into camera controls, it is throttle in the middle, and to get rid of the on-screen display that they have left, it is the pitch down for a couple of seconds, and then you can use your sticks to turn everything off. As for the frame, you can buy that separately, but from a competing company, and they have called it the SKYSTARS star-lorde, so it's quite difficult to find, and yeah, pretty cheap as well for the frame with all the TPU parts and everything, but it looks like GearBest does not stock this as a spare part, but this other website does. You don't get much in the box. As I mentioned, you get these 2 straps, but I really like them and they are the grippy kind. You get a spare set of the DJI Cyclone props. You get these SKYSTARS stickers and some more SKYSTARS stickers, and that is everything that you get. As for Betaflight, it came flash with version 3.52 and it needed some work, so air mode wasn't selected, and I also upped the digital idle speed to 6% to avoid death rolls. It was set up as D-Shot 1200 and smart audio was set up on the correct port as well, and everything was set up for S-Bus, so my XM Plus just worked straight away. I also changed the power and battery settings because I find the stock settings too high and the warnings always go off. This has got a beeper, so if you don't adjust that and go up on the throttle and you get voltage sag, then the beeper will go off and that annoys me. I would rather look at the on-screen display to tell me when my voltage is getting low. I did put my own rates in there, but I kept the PIDs the same. Now I think the PIDs are just stock Betaflight PIDs, but stock Betaflight PIDs work perfect with a Freestyle Copter like this with a GoPro on the top, so spoiler alert, it flew superbly. I had to change the channel map to TAER for my Tyrannus, but of course that is a personal preference thing. I did change the on-screen display around as well for my liking, and it is a PAL camera, this one, rather than NTSC. I also added my own custom modes in there as well, so you're going to need to be accustomed to Betaflight to get this one in the air. Okay, let's go for the Maiden with this guy. Now, as this is a Freestyle Copter, I usually do a line of sight test because Freestyle Copters aren't really about speed, so I don't usually do a speed run, but I will do a punch test. And as you can see, it has got a lot of punch, but with those low pitch propellers, it's very noisy as well. Now, I was expecting less power than that with these low pitch props, especially with the weight, but that's a good thing for freestyle, and especially for the stock Betaflight PIDs, because they work the best with a freestyle heavy copter with a GoPro on the top. This is a Tattu 1550 milliamp 4S battery, but it is quite antisocial. But with the lower pitch props, probably not drawing as many amps as it would be with a higher pitched prop, so we should get less voltage sag technically. Now, it's another grim day here in the UK, so I hope the GoPro is picking some of this up, but it really struggles with the colours and the white balance, as you may have seen on my Fimi review that I did the other day. But the good news is I'm not hearing any oscillations, and I did a test with the props off and it was not getting any yaw oscillations either, so I think this is going to be a pretty good one, you know. But yeah, it's pretty loud. If the dogs were awake, I'm sure they would be barking, but it's quite early. and that's what I have to do to get some usable light this time of year. See that LED's going at the back there quite nicely, and it's not a bad price, this guy, either. Seems to be flying nicely, and we have got plenty of power. I'm just gonna stick it back into angle mode to see if we've got any drift, because there is no external capacitor on here, so I'm gonna let go of the sticks and it's drifting that way. But if I turn it, it's drifting that way as well, and that is because that's the way the wind is blowing. So we don't have any noise that seems to be affecting the accelerometer, which is good news. But of course we'll have to see what that is doing to the video and how much noise that is producing, if any. But as for the line of sight test, it has passed, so let's get and do some FPV with it. So there's not much to say about this copter really, other than the voltage meter was out just slightly. Its resting voltage was 16.5, and I know the battery was charged to 16.8, so that needs changing. And also the current meter is slightly out as well, because I was using 1550 batteries, but I was landing and I think it was saying 1200. Those things are easy to calibrate, and if you go and look at my cheap £100 build that I did, I showed how to calibrate the current meter there. And to calibrate the voltage, it is literally just plug your battery in and mess with the figures. I think it's 110 as the stock value, and then just move it up and down 1 or 2 and see what the voltage changes like in Betaflight. But the video is squeaky clean. It flew absolutely superb, and I did 2 flights. I did one with the 50-40 props, and just as I suspected, it screamed and felt a little bit underpowered, but there wasn't much voltage sag. And I did a second flight with the 50-46 props, and there was way more power with that, but of course I got more voltage sag. Funnily enough, the flight times though, very similar. So there is my review. I would thoroughly recommend it, and I will link it in the below. I don't get paid for any of this, so if you can afford to do so, I will link to my Patreon, and I will leave you with some flying. So as always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.